Hello everyone, this is Saika here, and I know it's been almost 2 months that I have not shot my YouTube video, but then I was very busy and also held up with a lot of things. For a couple of weeks it was a bit gloomy, and I just did not have the kind of enthusiasm I have today to shoot a video. This is also quite impromptu actually. I just got out of the shower and I was like, what do I do next? Because I'm a little bit free today. I don't have that much work. So yeah, here I am with another video. Welcome to Help Me Understand, and I hope this is going to be a good video that you enjoy, because today is a bit different. Like, I'm gonna review this book which I have here. It's called 40 Rules of Love. It's by this Turkish author called ElifShafak, and this is my second book which I have read from the Turkish author. The other one which I read was Ayşe Kulen's Last Train to Istanbul, and that was a book which kept me hooked up. Nevertheless, this is one which I have in hand right now. I don't have the other one with me. I had borrowed it from a friend, but if I ever get a chance, I'll definitely review that as well. So let's begin. We see this book and it's quite popular across the world, I believe. So it was rated very well on Amazon.in, and I had purchased it from there. So this book basically revolves around different timelines. It revolves around the lives of different people. So though the name of this book says the 40 rules of love, right, it's not necessarily the kind of love that comes to our mind when we think of it. It's a very broader approach towards the concept of love, and it starts with a roaming dervish who happens to reach Turkey and meet a very popular philosophical poet called Rumi. And now, speaking of Rumi, I'm sure there are millions and millions of things that could be written about him, but it's in this book, what the author really emphasizes on is how Rumi, despite of being very philosophical and poetic in nature, comes to meet this person, and the friendship between the dervish, who is called the Shams of Tabriz, and Rumi evolves into a learning opportunity for Rumi. Yes, a lot of them may say that, but Rumi was already philosophical, he must have already been spiritual. Despite of all that, I think one of the major takeaways from this book is that no matter how much you know or you learn, there's always something else to learn. And if we get that from a person who comes from a different background and has a totally different perspective towards the world and life, then there is a lot of learning that happens in that process. Shams of Tabriz is a very contrasting character to the character of Rumi. While Rumi led a conventional life of having a family and living in a city and doing the same things over and again, Shams was never consistent. He was always traveling across the world, and that is how he would impart his lessons to the people who he would choose to be with. And the friendship between Shams and Rumi just evolves in a very beautiful way, that even Rumi, despite of already being so successful and celebrated poet, he still had a lot of learnings and takeaways from Shams. So the other thing which I might have missed out saying is that this book is set in two different timelines. One is the 13th century, where of course the poet Rumi was being celebrated, and he has his own journey of meeting this person called Shams. And then there is also a modern perspective to the whole story of Rumi and Shams, which is taking place in 2008. So it's as close as 2008, and it's of a woman who is leading a very conventional life that all women are supposed to lead, but somewhere in her marriage and having the and despite being very blessed with a lot of wealth and a good home, she was somewhere unhappy, like there's a void in her. And when she comes to meet another traveler through exchanges of emails and everything, she even for her there's a lot of learning, right? And she develops a different kind of approach towards life when she meets when she has conversations with this traveler who's roaming around the world, and where he says that he could read aura and a lot of things, right? So it's set between two different timelines, and the learning for Ella and Rumi somehow happens parallelly through people who are very different, to their own personality. My takeaway from Ella's journey somehow is that, or even for that matter, from Rumi's journey, somehow is that if we seek out people, or if we just, are open to meet people from different backgrounds or different kind of, thought process, we eventually end up developing critical thinking. So I think I really enjoyed that part, the blossoming of the friendship between the two sets of different people across different timelines, and how the other uh, becomes a method for them to learn different things that they might otherwise never had the opportunity to. So another character in this book is the Harlot of Rose. I don't exactly remember what was the name she was called by. I think it must have been Harlot of Rose, but there's a chapter which is clearly dedicated to her, and her character is described in a way that she is the Harlot of Rose, and she happens to be a sex worker who is somehow put in such circumstances. She's very unhappy with it, and as everyone would want, she wants to get out of that situation as soon as possible. And even she goes through very challenging times of like coming out of that place that she is in, and leading a better life. So that happens, and it's the journey from that place where she lives in, to becoming more spiritual, to having a better order of thinking, is just another thing that keeps any reader of this book interested in the journey. After all these characters, there are many other characters in the book, like Rumi's wife, who was of a different faith, and she had married him. And then there is another character who is a young girl whom Rumi has adopted as his own child, and then he has a son. And all these characters, they play very vital roles in shaping of the story and Rumi's and Sham's life overall. Lastly, if you really ask me, I mean, I would give this book, I think, a 7 out of 10. It is definitely a book which keeps you very interested, like you would want to flip the pages and not just be like, okay, what is this, it's not one of those books which you just read first 2 pages and you're like, okay, I don't understand anything, and I just hate this. It's a very beautiful book. I must really appreciate the effort of the author to keep the readers interested in this book, despite stories taking place in two different timelines. So but having said that, I think the things that I didn't enjoy was the fact that the author takes us to this time in history, and the stories that are being told is so interesting. But somewhere in between, like it's lost. Like we don't know where that story eventually takes the characters of the story. So that was like a bit of what do I say, that was a bit of a dull moment I had while reading the book, and it did not really, keep me hooked up. It definitely did not care, It's not one of those books, right, which you wouldn't want to put down. So, yeah. So that was my take on this very beautiful book, a deeply spiritual book. It's again not about romantic love. It's more about like different kinds of love, whether it's spiritual, whether it's divine, whether it's materialistic, mundane, or romantic. It just covers different aspects of love. And one of the rule does say that, uh, a life without love is of no account. And you just through this book you just discover different kinds of love, and you open your eyes to the possibilities of a beautiful life, having beautiful experiences, meeting friends who are completely different to your personality. And I would suggest all my viewers to like get a copy of this book and read it. It's very easy to read. One of the pros, I think I did mention few downsides, but then one of the cons of this book is that it's very easy to read. It's written in very simple English. I think the author happens to be Turkish. She writes in English, and later on her books are translated from English to Turkish. That's what I've heard. I'm not exactly sure. Definitely give it a read. And let me just see like how many pages it has. It's around 350 pages, so it shouldn't be that difficult, for us to read this. And do let me know what you think about it. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting journey to read this book. It could take around 10 days if you're a new reader. I am not an avid reader, but I'm also not a new reader, so I think I took around 4 nights. I'm a bit nocturnal, so yeah. So do give it a read and let me know what you think about it. uh, it'll be very interesting to see whether you would feel the same kind of you'd have the same kind of perception of this book as I had, or would you have something different? And I think the differences would be more interesting, because I could get to learn a lot from you. So that's all from my end. I think I've had a very long day. Thank you so much for watching me. Have a nice day. Bye.